Ever felt like you're just drowning in information, trying to figure out not just what's happening, but, why it's happening and what on earth you're supposed to do about it?
Uh-huh. Those huge, shapeless problems.
Exactly. Less like a neat puzzle, more like this swirling fog you can't quite see through. Well, you are definitely not alone.
Happens all the time.
So today, this deep dive is really for you, our curious listener, if you want to cut through that noise and sort of quickly grasp some really sophisticated ways to handle immense complexity.
Yeah, powerful frameworks.
We're diving into the world of Army Design Methodology, or ADM, and the cognitive engine behind it, systems thinking.
Really fascinating stuff.
Our mission today really is to unpack how the U.S. Army tackles these truly complex, often ill-structured problems.
Right, the kind where people don't even agree on what the problem is.
Precisely, let alone the solution. So we'll explore the mental tools, the techniques they use to understand these intricate situations, frame the challenges, visualize approaches, and hopefully avoid some common thinking traps along the way.
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to understanding a really robust, iterative way to tackle some thorny challenges.
And where are we getting this info from?
Right, so to guide us, we've really dug into some key sources. We're drawing heavily from official Army publications like ATP 50.1. That's one that really details ADM.
Okay.
And also crucial research from the U.S. Army Research Institute. They've done a lot of work delving into systems thinking principles. We're basically distilling the essence for you.
Got it. The core nuggets. So let's kick off at the beginning then. Why? Why did the Army need something like ADM? You'd think they already had solid planning, right?
You would, but, the sources tell us that back in the early 2000s, commanders, their staffs, they were really starting to struggle. The situations they faced were just getting more and more complex. And they found that their traditional planning methods, well, they often led them to just address the symptoms.
Okay. Not the root causes.
Yeah, exactly. Not the deep-seated issues. And as you can imagine, that often meant solutions that were ineffective or sometimes even made things worse.
Right. Counterproductive. Makes sense.
And what really highlights this need is just the nature of military operations themselves. I mean, they're fundamentally human endeavor.
Human endeavors.
Yeah.
Meaning messy.
Messy, unpredictable, yeah. Constant adaptation, this give and take between everyone involved. Uncertainty is just everywhere. Enemy actions, how populations react, totally unforeseen events.
Okay.
And all this creates what the Army terms ill-structured problems. These aren't simple puzzles, They're situations where the end goal isn't even clear.
Wow.
And leaders might completely disagree on how to define the problem itself, let alone figure out how to solve it.
That really resonates. And I bet if you're listening, you've probably bumped into something similar. Maybe not military, but like a huge project at work.
Oh, absolutely.
Or some big organizational change, or even a societal issue where the right path is just foggy. It's the same kind of challenge, isn't it?
It really is. How do you get a whole team with different views to even agree on where to start when the problem itself is so, nebulous?
So how do you start? Where does ADM come in?
That's precisely its role. ADM is defined, the official definition is something like a methodology for applying critical and creative thinking to understand, visualize, and describe unfamiliar problems and approaches to solving them.
Okay, critical and creative thinking.
Yeah, both. It's basically an aid for that conceptual planning stage, for decision-making. It's designed to bring some clarity into that chaos.
And you mentioned it connects different kinds of planning.
Exactly. It bridges this really critical gap between the conceptual planning, that big picture thinking about the environment, the problems, the desired end state.
The what and why.
Right.
Yeah.
And the detailed planning, which is translating that big vision into concrete, actionable steps, the how.
Okay.
And it's specifically designed to support what they call organizational learning, meaning the team can adapt as things change.
Oh, so it's not rigid?
Not at all. You can even reframe your whole understanding if, your initial assumptions turn out wrong or the situation shifts dramatically. It's built for learning as you go.
A continuous learning loop, not just a checklist you tick off.
Precisely.
And that ties into something you touched on. It's iterative. That seems really key.
Hugely important. There's no single fixed set of steps you just follow A, B, C. It's more like you frame the situation, you take some action based on that framing, you assess what happened.
And then you loop back.
You loop back, you refine your understanding, maybe you reframe entirely. It's like you're constantly updating your map as you explore new territory you didn't expect.
Okay, constantly updating the map. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So this framing concept seems central. How does that actually work?
It really is the core of ADM. Framing is basically about building these conceptual models of reality, making sense of things by establishing context.
Like sketching out the territory before you start the journey.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And the Army breaks this down into three main activities, or pillars.
Okay, 3 pillars. What's the first one?
The first pillar is framing an operational environment. The goal here is to get a really deep understanding of the current situation, what's happening right now.
The asses.
The assets, yeah. But also projecting future trends, figuring out what other actors in the situation want their desired states, and then, really importantly, envisioning a desired end state for your own efforts.
So where we are, where it might go, what others want, and where we want to end up.
You got it. And to do this thoroughly, they use a framework of operational variables. It's a mnemonic, PMET.
PMET. Okay, what does that stand for?
Political, military, economic, social, information, infrastructure, physical environment, and time.
Wow, okay. That's comprehensive.
It's designed to be. It's a systematic checklist almost to make sure you're looking at the whole complex picture, not just the military aspect, for example.
Can you give us an example? You mentioned a Newland scenario earlier.
Yeah, the sources use this fictional counter-drug scenario in Newland. So using this first pillar, the planning team would meticulously map out that environment.
What would that look like?
It means understanding things like, how does opium microfinance actually work on the ground? What's the role of the processing labs? Where are the smuggling networks? Who are the powerful narco barons?
Okay.
But also, crucially, what political protection do they have? And how do other groups, say insurgents, benefit indirectly, maybe by taxing farmers or getting contributions?
So you're mapping the entire ecosystem, all the connections.
The whole ecosystem, not just isolated pieces. A living, breathing picture.
Okay, that makes sense. You get this incredibly detailed map. What's next? Pillar 2?
Pillar 2 is framing problems. Now that you understand the environment, the goal is to identify the specific issues that are impeding progress towards that desired end state you defined earlier. Exactly. But they're not seen as just isolated incidents. They're framed as tensions between different parts of the system, between the current state and the desired state, or between different actors' goals. And these tensions form what the Army calls a system of problems.
A system of problems, not just one problem.
Right. And this is where that ill-structured nature really comes into play. Because often leaders will look at the same environment map and disagree fundamentally.
Disagree on what the actual problem is.
Yes, or disagree on what the end state should realistically be, or even if it's achievable. ADM helps force those disagreements out into the open by demanding this detailed shared understanding of what's really going on under the surface. It basically forces the conversation. Are we all even looking at the same mountain here? Do we agree on what we're trying to climb?
Okay, so back to Newland. What kind of problems might they frame there?
Well, applying this, the team might quickly realize the problems are way bigger than just drugs. They might identify things like the official Newland Defense Force is actually impeding democracy, or there's rampant corruption everywhere, or the cartels are intimidating neighboring countries. Maybe the political leadership has direct ties to the criminals. And without fixing the security forces, there's a high risk of civil conflict.
So it's this tangled web.
A totally tangled, interconnected web. You start seeing how fixing just one piece, like busting a few labs, isn't going to solve the fundamental issues.
Right, you pull one thread and it just tightens knots elsewhere. Okay, so you've mapped the environment, you've framed this system of problems. What's pillar 3?
Pillar 3 is framing solutions. This is where you develop the operational approach.
The strategy.
Essentially, yes. It's about developing broad general actions and means to solve or manage identified problems. It's the commander's high-level visualization of what needs to be done to address those tensions you identified. The blueprint.
How do they develop that blueprint? Are there specific tools or concepts?
They use concepts from what the Army calls operational art. It's less about specific tactics and more a way of thinking strategically.
Okay, like what?
Things like identifying the center of gravity for different actors. That's their core source of power or strength. And the decisive points, keys, to attacking or protecting those centers of gravity.
Leverage points, almost.
So like leverage points, yeah.
They also think about lines of operation, how actions connect physically, like supply routes and lines of effort, which are more logical connections, especially for non-military stuff like influencing public opinion or building economic stability.
Okay, so physical links and logical links.
Right, and they also categorize actions broadly. There are defeat mechanisms aimed at an adversary, like destroy, dislocate, isolate. And stability mechanisms focused on the population and environment, compel, control, influence, support. It ensures they're thinking about both the fight and the build. Compel, control, influence, support. Okay, so for Newland, what might that operational approach look like?
It would likely involve a multi-pronged approach, often using the DIME framework.
Dime.
Diplomatic, information, military, economic. So diplomatically, maybe pressure leaders, share intel with international banks.
Yeah.
Informationally, target opium farmers with messages about alternatives. Militarily, go after the narco barons, destroy labs, interdict smuggling.
Right.
And economically, maybe freeze assets, provide real alternatives for farmers. The key thing here
Yeah.
is that this is still conceptual. It's not the super detailed plan yet. It provides the focus, the boundaries, for that later detailed planning, like the military decision-making process or MDMP.
Right.
It avoids getting bogged down too early.
Got it. Sets the direction and the major lines of action, but not every single step. Okay, this ADM framework is fascinating, but you mentioned it runs on an engine called systems thinking. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, systems thinking is really the cognitive foundation for ADM. It's fundamentally about understanding how all the parts of a system work, and crucially how they influence each other as part of a greater whole.
Seeing the forest, not just the trees.
Exactly. But also understanding how the trees interact, how the soil affects the trees, how the weather affects the soil, the whole interconnected web.
And systems themselves, they have certain characteristics.
They do, and they're really interesting. Systems are adaptive and fluid. They're constantly changing, not static. You can't just freeze them in time.
Always shifting.
Always. They're also often counterintuitive. The obvious fix, the simple solution. Sometimes it makes things worse or leads to the exact opposite of what you expected.
Oh, I can see that happening easily.
Yeah. Which leads to the idea of leverage points. Small changes, if applied in the right spot, can create huge, lasting improvements. But finding those points, that's the tricky part. They're often not obvious at all.
Like finding the one tiny gear that unlocks the whole machine.
Sort of, yeah. And most real-world systems are open systems, not closed. They're constantly interacting with their environment. That makes them harder to control, sure, but it also gives you more potential points of influence.
Okay, more ways in.
More ways in. And maybe the most critical characteristic is feedback loops. Actions in one part ripple out, affect another part, which then feeds back and affects the original part.
Can you give an example of a feedback loop?
Sure. The classic, though grim, example is the Cold War arms race. The U.S. sees the Soviets building arms, feels insecure, so it builds more arms.
Right.
The Soviets see the U.S. building arms, feel more insecure, so they build more arms. That increased insecurity feeds back, reinforcing the initial suspicion and driving more arms building. That's a positive or reinforcing feedback loop spiraling upward.
Okay, I see. A vicious cycle.
Exactly. But you also have balancing feedback loops. Think about customer complaints about a product. Those complaints lead the company to improve the design.
Which leads to fewer complaints.
Right. That loop helps stabilize the system. Understanding these loops is crucial for seeing why systems behave the way they do.
That's incredibly helpful. It's not just random cause and effect, it's these interconnected cycles. So is systems thinking just a concept, or are there skills involved?
Oh, there are definitely skills. The sources break it down into about 5 key dimensions or actionable skills you can actually develop.
Okay, like what?
First, simply identifying elements. Just knowing who and what is involved. Listing the ingredients, so to speak.
Got it. The players and pieces.
Second, understanding dynamic relationships. How do those elements connect? Is it cause effect, correlation? Is it linear, nonlinear? Are there reinforcing loops? Balancing loops, what are the second and third order effects?
So how the ingredients interact, the chemistry.
Exactly. Third is shifting perspectives. Being able to see the situation from different viewpoints, different stakeholders, different levels in an organization, different cultural lenses.
Stepping into someone else's shoes.
Yes. Fourth, identifying holistic patterns. Stepping back from the detail to see the big picture emerging from all those interactions. What kind of dish are all these ingredients actually making?
Seeing the overall shape.
And finally, fifth, responding to change. Because systems are dynamic, you have to be open to new information, ready to adapt your understanding, adjust your mental model as the system evolves.
Like constantly taste testing and adjusting the recipe.
Perfect analogy. It's a continuous process.
Okay, that makes systems thinking much more concrete. It's a set of skills for navigating complexity. Now, you mentioned reframing earlier in ADM. How does that fit with the dynamic nature of systems?
It fits perfectly. Because systems are dynamic, reframing isn't just optional, it's essential. It means you have to constantly revisit your initial understanding.
Why?
Well, maybe your assessments show you're not making progress, or maybe you realize some of your core assumptions were just wrong, or the whole environment has shifted under your feet.
Okay.
Reframing is what allows you to adjust. It's sometimes called double loop learning. You're not just adjusting your actions within the existing frame.
You're questioning the frame itself.
Exactly. You're questioning the underlying values, the assumptions that led to that frame in the first place. It's asking, are we even climbing the right mountain, let alone climbing it the right way?
That sounds challenging, especially for a team.
It absolutely is, which is why ADM is so heavily team-based. You need diverse perspectives to do this well.
What kind of diversity?
All kinds. Different skill sets, different knowledge bases, people from different ranks or levels, different backgrounds, genders, even different thinking styles. You want cognitive diversity.
To avoid blind spots.
Precisely. And the ideal environment for this isn't a lecture hall where one person talks. It's more like a collaborative circle designed for open dialogue, where everyone feels safe contributing, challenging ideas. It's about collective intelligence, not hierarchy.
That makes sense. But what typically gets in the way of that kind of open, critical thinking? Are there common roadblocks?
Oh, definitely. Our sources highlight several common thinking traps that derail this process.
Like what?
Well, there are cognitive biases. These are those unconscious shortcuts or beliefs that influence how we process information. Things like confirmation bias.
Where you look for proof that you're already right.
Exactly. You seek out info that supports what you already believe and ignore stuff that contradicts it. I mean, I know I'm guilty of that. Sometimes when I'm looking at reviews online, I kind of want the product to be good, so I focus on the positive ones.
Huh. Yeah, me too. What else?
There's sunk cost bias. That's sticking with a bad plan just because you've already invested so much time or money or effort into it, even when evidence says it's failing.
Throwing good money after bad.
Yep. Then you have things like groupthink. That's where the desire for harmony or consensus within the group overrides a realistic appraisal of alternatives. People don't speak up with doubts because they don't want to rock the boat.
Dangerous in high-stakes situations.
Very. And mirror imaging, assuming that other people, maybe your adversaries or partners, think and will act just like you would in the same situation, which is often totally wrong.
Yeah, assuming rationality or shared values that might not exist.
Right. And maybe one more, the narrative fallacy. We love stories, so we tend to create plausible-sounding narratives to explain complex events, even when we have very little actual information. We connect dots that aren't really connected.
We impose order on chaos, even if it's artificial.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
overcoming these traps is a huge part of making ADM and systems thinking work.
How do you do that? How do leaders counter these traps?
The key is fostering that environment we talked about. Leaders must create a climate where challenging ideas is not just okay, but actively encouraged, even if the challenge comes from a junior member.
Psychological safety.
Absolutely. The goal has to be achieving a deeper shared understanding of that complex reality, that fog, not just being right or maintaining a superficial harmony. It's about collectively building a much richer, more accurate map.
Okay. This has been incredibly insightful. So let's try to wrap this up. What's the big takeaway for our listeners? What does all this figure for them?
Well, I think the main thing is that ADM and systems thinking, well developed in a military context, offer this really robust framework for anyone, really, anyone tackling complex, messy problems.
In business, in nonprofits, maybe even in personal life.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating the habits of stepping back, seeing the interconnections, really challenging your own assumptions, and being ready, willing to adapt as things change. It's a powerful toolkit for becoming truly well-informed and ultimately more effective.
A way to navigate that fog instead of just being lost in it.
That's a great way to put it.
So maybe a final thought to leave people with. Something to chew on.
Yeah, maybe connect this to the bigger picture for yourself. Think about a complex situation you are facing right now. Could be work, could be personal.
Okay.
Now imagine sketching out its key elements. Who are the players? What are the main factors? Then try to map out the relationships between them. How do they influence each other? Are there feedback loops? Try looking at it from different perspectives. How would other people involved see it? And ask yourself, where might the leverage points be? Where could a small shift make a big difference?
Okay.
Just doing that exercise, how might that change how you approach the situation? How might it change what you even thought the problem was in the first place?
That's powerful.
So the challenge is, identify your own muddiest point, that area of confusing complexity in your own life or work, and try using just a few of these tools framing, looking for system dynamics to see if you can bring a little more clarity to it.